Good day, friends. Hope everyone had a happy Easter. And let's just jump right into it, shall we? What the heck is going on? Let's see here. Let's jump over to Vegas. There's a fair amount of progress that's been made in the last couple days. So this is where we're on the final sequence of the show, so I guess the recap would be, sorry about that, I just bumped my microphone. Kids are thinking about getting out of Dodge. Okay, I might want to return to that shot right there and tone down the defocusing. I guess I went a little too far on that one. That would be 94J. If it is in fact a Krita, then I'll do it quickly. If it's not, then I'll, no, it looks like it is. Okay. Oh, looks like we have a problem. The filtering is baked in. So, I think I shall not deal with that right now. Yeah, I mean, it's important, but it's not that important. I can come back to that one. It's going to require a couple more steps, which is pretty much what I'm about to launch into in the next shot I'm working on. Okay, so monkey found the nuts. They're getting out of grips and getting out of Dodge as fast as possible. And I'm not going to recap the dialogue at this point. It's just a little interaction between the kids. So we're coming into the home stretch here. We're past the 21-minute point. So episode obviously being 24 minutes-ish in the days of streaming, of course. Truth is, it doesn't have to be exact. So that's that. Okay, so we're coming back to Mel. Now, one of the things you do need to be aware of, this is not a criticism or a rant or anything, but it is something to be aware of, is with Tahoma2D that I have it set up by default that when I bring in externalized imagery, I am generally loading it, not importing it. Why is that, no pun intended, important? Because what I did on this shot is I imported the boat. So I guess we could turn this preview on. So I brought in the boat, and the boat imagery, for whatever reason, I don't remember right now, was actually stored on the RAM drive. So it got deleted, not a big deal. So how do we fix that? Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hop into Krita and simply pull up one of these images, and I'm gonna erase everything except the boat and just repaint over Melchizidek, so we actually have a boat image to work with here. So again, not a big deal. So we're going to be getting rid of all of that. And I would say, oh, I see. I'm using a different stylus. It's spring cleaning time, friends, and there was one of my styluses that had long since disappeared was discovered under the sofa. Well, it looks like that stylus is not set up to have a right mouse click. I'm going to turn on the stabilizer here, just to make it a little in fact, you know what would be even better? Probably. Let's just use the Bezier curve tool. So we'll just go here and here. One nice thing here in Krita is you can click your middle mouse button and move things around even in the middle of using the Bezier curve tool. So that just makes it easier to, and then the 5 key gets rid of the curvature there on the screen. So now that I've done that, I can, let me think about this. Oops. Yes, I think select, let's invert the selection. Doesn't make it totally easy, but it makes it easier. Oops, I guess I should turn the stabilizer back off. So yeah, I just gotta clean this out, and then I'll just paint over Mel, and that's that. This was originally painted in Tahoma. At least I think it was. I wonder why it was on the RAM drive though. That is actually kind of weird. Okay, so now all I have to do is just start. Let me redo that one. So one thing I could do is sort of the same thing I just did. Use the magic wand to select the blank area, and then go selection, invert, and then that way I can't accidentally go outside the lines, which just makes it slightly easier here. Okay, and because he's chillaxing on the boat, we gotta have this be sort of in shadow. Okay, so we'll just overlap his arm a little bit there, and then go to this color, which obviously in the next shot is going to once again be covered up by Mel. Okay, now we'll just tighten it up a bit. This could be tightened up anyway. In fact, I'll once I finish this, I'll stick it in the original shot and re-render it just for completeness, and then be able to use this same image in the next shot as well. So that's the plan, friends. I'm going to go ahead and put this, turn the stabilizer back on, turn this little bit tighter shadow. Whoops, that I did not mean to do. Okay, now the rest of it, let's turn the stabilizer back off, probably sample, something like that. I'm going to use the oil paintbrush, which is what I think I remember using for this. Which again, it's kind of weird. I would have saved it on the RAM drive. Not sure what was going on at that point. But we're not going to sweat it. It doesn't matter that much. Let's just get Mel covered up. And then this brush is quite nice for blending purposes. The only caveat being you have to, like, you can see what's happening at the edge of the screen. That always happens with this brush. Trust me, it's worth it. It's a great brush. Sometimes, actually, the way to deal with that is to add another layer underneath it. Grab this color and just basically put the solid color underneath, and then you can always bake it down later. So that's what's on that layer. That looks pretty good. 5 key. Oop, looks like we got a little issue over here. But it's really kind of amazing how that works. It really fights against the painting on the edges. It's really the only downside with that brush. Okay, so we're going to save this as, let's see, the original shot was Q. So what I'm going to do is, whoops, save this as episode 3 shot Q, and we'll just call this boat dot ping. Yeah, we'll just do that. Also save it as a Krita file. In this particular case, I don't want to see a reason to do that. Okay, so then we jump back to Tahoma, and this column, which is obviously somewhat problematic. What we can do, though, instead of deleting it and just redragging it in, what we can do is go to the level settings, I believe. Yes, and take this. Let's just replace it with the correct image. I'm looking for my shortcut. It looks like, unfortunately, in Tahoma, I don't have a. Let me see what I've got in favorites here. I need to put this destination in the favorites, frankly. So, what are we talking about? Scenes. Double click, and now go to episode 3, which is the folder kind of at the end of the scene folders. Here we go. That. And then we're going to go down to Q, PQ. Wait. I thought I saved this in Q. Stop everything. This is a great example of something I bump into all the time. When I have an expectation, and then for some goofy reason, who knows why, it's not there. Then just stop everything and see what might have gone wrong here. Save as. There it is. Episode 3, 393Q. I saved it in the wrong place. It's supposed to be 94Q. That was silly. Okay, so now this is the OCD part. The OCD part says I have to go into 93Q and delete that. Can I do it from here? I guess I can. So it's episode 3, 94Q. Save it there. Wait, yes, save it there. Okay, now the world can start turning again. All right, so I'm going to choose that. And wango bango, everything seems to look fine. Although, actually, I'll go ahead and save all, and I will re-render it, but I want to put some better wood texture on the boat. I'm not really happy with that. So, okay, so let's check the shot. Looks like everything is cool, but again, not happy with the boat. So let's just Control E, we'll flatten that down, and let's grab the always favorite Conan brush. Let's go to full screen. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, and by the way, I'm actually going to see if there's any erroneous pixel data floating around. Okay, so back to the brush. I'm going to grab that and then just lighten it a bit. Obviously, I could be using blending modes so that it interacts a little bit more sensibly with the shadow area versus the non-shadow area, but you know, there's more than one way to skin that cat. I'm going to grab that shadow color there. Yeah, I just want to put in some boat texture. That's probably okay. The 5 key, zip out. Yeah, that looks really good, actually. Let me, in fact, I want to change this a little bit. I want to tighten that up. But yeah, I definitely think it sells the wood idea a little better. Okay, and then here, I suppose probably, that feels a little strong to me. Let's just grab the shadow color. And then we'll grab that as ostensibly a highlight color. Sure what that is. Oh, that's remnants of Melchizedek. That's what that is. So yeah, I guess I could. This is where that Bezier tool might be a little better. But we're in a hurry, so. Okay, so now hit the 5 key, and I'm just going to say, let's just put some variety in here. A lot of it won't be seen, obviously, because Mel's going to be in front of it. But then let's grab, I don't know, let's grab that color and see if we can actually smack some, nope. I'm going to go ahead and rotate the canvas. I used to never rotate the canvas, and lately I find myself doing it kind of a lot, actually. Okay, so now if we save that, if I'm not mistaken, I gotta remember here with Tahoma, I think what I need to do is I think I need to reload this. This is Q. Yeah. Remember it. Okay, let's take half a second. Look at the anything going on in the chat. Awkward Penguin. Hey, how's it going today? Oh, it's going okay, man. It's going okay. It's a busy time now that I've been saying all winter that once the spring hit, I was gonna get cracking on fixing things up around the house, and I've been doing kind of a lot of that actually last few days. So that's humming along. Okay. Now what I need to do is I need to save this scene as, and instead of being P, this needs to be S. Boom. Hello? Hello, Tahoma? Hello? Okay. So now, in the dialogue, or the script I should say, he had said, well, at least we made it out of Gripson in one piece. I don't blame you, Tina. It's hard to imagine your family being worse than being stuck in the wilderness with, well, you know, us. Okay, there's a lot there. So let me think about this for a minute. One thing that is for certain is that this keyframe needs to be deleted, and this keyframe should be moved to the top. And that's because as the scene progresses, actually we don't want to be in rendered mode. We'll just, I don't want to go, this scene's going to definitely be more than 30 frames. He's got a pretty long bit of dialogue, so I'm going to say, let's go to, what would 12 seconds be, 96? Let's go to 96. That's probably ridiculously long, but that's okay. Okay, so I guess Awkward Penguin, I think you're the only one watching. But yeah, I mean, if you have any other questions, just chime in. Okay, so one thing that needs to happen is Melchizedek opens his eyes and looks over at Tianara. So IMHO probably... See, this is the kind of thing that's kind of easier in Krita, but it's definitely doable here. But I want to be... Actually, I need to be very careful right now. And I should probably explain why. Again, I kind of said earlier, this is not a rant or a complaint. It's just something you really do need to be aware of. The reason I had the issue with the boat is because generally Tahoma is referencing images on the hard drive. Whereas when I bring animation frames or whatever into Krita, it's stored in the Krita file. So once it's brought into Krita, it could be deleted off the hard disk and it doesn't matter. So why is that important here? Well, once you get into a dialogue situation, you're going to be reusing the same shots. Typically, maybe 3 times, sometimes more, but, right? So here's what the danger is. If I make some modifications to this TLV, or I should say this smart raster level, and the change I would make would be to erase part of his face and put it in another layer. Problem is, I can almost guarantee you, right now we're working on S, which is referencing all the assets that were originally created for shot P. P, Q, R, S, or maybe it was Q. I guess it's Q. That means if I change any of the levels that already existed, again, just something to keep in mind. If I change any of the levels that already existed, then when I go to open up Q for some goofy reason and need to re-render it, I'm going to find out that this drawing of Mel is no longer correct because this is still being referenced from its location. Now there's ways around that, such as correct. Well, and Tom's chiming in with solutions. All I'm trying to do is elucidate what the problem is. Just because once you bump into it, if you haven't hedged to guard yourself against the problems you might bump into, then it could bite you hard. And so it's just, again, something to be aware of. There's more than one solution to the problem. One of the solutions would be to make a local copy of the TLV and drag it back in. Not a problem. Of course you can do that. So it's just that in Krita, you don't have to be remembering where things came from, okay, if you will, you know. In Tahoma, you kind of do. Now, the way you mitigate the problem completely, if you want to, and on smaller projects, it certainly makes sense to do so, is you just go into your preferences, and for loading, I always load the file from the current location. So for me, this is not like a surprising problem to have. Probably for most people, you would either import or you would always ask, and then you decide at the time whether you're loading it or importing it. This problem, though, or not problem, this situation's a little different, though. Because remember, what I did was I took one scene and I just saved it under a new name so I could reuse all the assets. So solution number 2 is just create a new level here. Hit the B key and just create another smart raster level. And cover him up. Okay, so now one thing I'm wanting to be aware of here is probably for my purposes I should be turning these off because this color should actually be that color, right? So in this case, probably the best solution is to just add a new level. There you go, like problem solved, right? Not a big deal. It becomes a little more complex, however, if I decide I want to start moving his head around and really doing anything in the animation space. Now for me, and by the way, Tom, I was going to tell you, I just remembered this, so I want to say it while I'm thinking about it. As you know, one thing I've done a lot in Tahoma over the years is create some art in Krita where the it's just the painting interface is a little nicer or whatever, and just literally cut it and paste in through the clipboard. There are some gotchas that go with that, but basically it's pretty useful. So the other day we were talking about, like, essentially if I had a wish list of features or whatever that would be quite useful in Tahoma, and right now I don't even remember what it was we talked about, but one of the things that occurred to me yesterday or the day before about that would be wherever the code is in Tahoma that takes it off the clipboard and lets you paste it in, it would be nice if we had the inverse. Now, I understand there's some problems with that, in a sense. So what do I mean by that? Well, I'm saying, in other words, it would be quite cool if I could isolate a layer, do this, hit the S key, probably wisest to select all, and be able to actually just go in the other direction, paste it back into Krita. I can guarantee you that that would prove extremely useful a lot of the time, because what it does is it basically says, okay, actually I'll clarify this even better for you. One of the gotchas with the clipboard situation is if I hit Control A and I have material, and you may already know this, Tom. Yes, correct. Tom is correct. What he's saying is the equivalent of the way Tahoma works when it does a load as opposed to an import is exactly and man, you're on it, Tom. Okay, everything Tom is saying is right. Okay, so the comment at 156 is spot on correct. Okay, just so you know, that's another, there's 10 solutions to this problem, but the one Tom just said is, well, why don't you just hit the D key and add another drawing, but use that one over here, and that way the original scene would reference this drawing and this scene would reference the second one, and they may actually be identical drawings. It wouldn't matter, but that effectively protects the other scene because it's referencing this drawing, and all we just do is just create a copy. And then there's another drawing stuck in the TLV level. And Tom is kind of elucidating another point about TLV levels, which is the TLV levels themselves, the smart raster levels, do effectively behave the way Krita does. The images that are in the TLV are baked into the TLV. So, anywho, so this is just about the utility of the clipboard. So yet another caveat is, obviously you could hit Control R instead of Control Shift R, because I'm not rendering my scene, but just render into a viewer and then save it. Obviously you could do that. Save it to the RAM drive or save it to some known location and then bring that into Krita. No question, across the board, of course that's true. We could, if we save files and then just load them into the other program, yes, it takes a whole 30 seconds extra. So I'm just talking perfect world here. If I was in my perfect world, how would it work? Okay, when I go from Krita to Tahoma through the clipboard, the main problem, and I don't know if it's solvable from the Tahoma side, is that if this image, and again, Tom probably already knows this, but if this image was, say, like that, just for the sake of argument, okay, such that the pixels in the image don't fill up the entire screen. If that's the case, the basic catch about using the clipboard is you have to go like this and put some little pixels in the corner so that when it goes across the clipboard, Tahoma knows that the extents of the drawing are actually all the way to the edge. Because otherwise what will happen is, for example, if this was off-center like this, when I paste it into Tahoma, it's actually going to get centered. And it's going to be cropped to the visible area that has pixels. Basically the smallest rectangle that it can manage. For me, it'd be like better if that wasn't the case. I would rather be able to say, look, if I go Control A, I'd prefer to see all the pixels all the way to the edge of the screen are what, makes its way back over to Tahoma through the clipboard. Don't know if the pasting from the clipboard has any way of controlling that. I'm just not sure. Probably not, because it's really it's probably Krita that's doing the cropping, but it might not be. You'd have to experiment. Well, I guess the way to experiment with it would be to, okay, let's find out. If I take this and shrink it, okay, but then I hit Control A and hit Control C. All right. This is really kind of an interesting question. Create a new scene in Krita and paste. Okay. In Krita, it appears that, well, I don't really know. Actually, the truth is that doesn't tell me anything, because the it could be, well, I guess the question would be, is it centered? The only way I can tell is to go like this, set them both to full size, and see if they're different. They are different. Ah, that's bad. That means that the situation I'm describing is actually Krita's fault. So Tahoma can't do anything about that. So anyway, okay, fine. We prove that. But the greater point does remain valid, which is it would be cool if we could select stuff from here and actually go across the clipboard back to Krita. Mainly just for using Liquify. That's actually why I would do it. It would be kind of nice, because then you could, you know, there's 8 ways to do it, but what happens is you run into a situation in Tahoma where you need to do some deformation, and the plastic tool just doesn't quite cut the mustard for the particular shot, and in that scenario, the Liquify thing can help you. Obviously, if you're loving Blender, none of this matters, because the deformation tools are outstanding in Blender, particularly because you have 2 ways to do it. You can use sculpting, which is like Liquify, but you also can use edit mode, which effectively lets you create a jointed armature on the fly. If you don't have any idea what I mean by that, it would be like this. It would be like being able to select everything around his shoulder, like select this. Pretend the arm isn't going behind his head. Pretend the arm was going straight. In Blender, in edit mode, you could select this and move the arm, and everything here would kind of nicely deform with it, kind of thing. That comes with its own, you know, risks, because obviously you potentially are going to deform part of his head when you didn't mean to. So you're always in this process of having to think about your strategy, how you do things. But anyway, as far as the clipboard goes, if it can bring it in, you'd think it could bring it out. And what it would probably want to do is first internally do a render so that you're rasterizing the smart raster level into just a set of dumb pixels, right? And that's what would go across on the clipboard. Again, you can always just save it to the hard drive and load it into Krita, so it's not like a deal breaker or anything, that's for sure. Okay. But I only bring it up because, you know, if there's a wish list, I could see that coming in handy kind of a lot of the time. It'd probably work if the background was full, not transparent. It would. Actually, it would. That's why the dot trick. I figured out the dot trick a long time ago. If you put what I would do when I ran into this is I'd put red dots in the corners, cut and paste, come into Tahoma, and immediately just go over here and erase the red dots. You know, is that appreciably easier than saving the image to the hard drive, where it's definitely going to have the correct dimensions, and then loading it into Tahoma? If that's your argument, I have to say you have a good point, because probably it isn't, you know. Anyway, back to work. Okay, so if we're going to make this happen, what we want to do is all of the dialogue. This is Mel's mouth, so I'm going to actually change the name of this level to mouth. Save all. And actually, you know what? I'm going to, as long as we're looking at Tahoma's file management proclivities, I'm waiting for Tahoma to finish saving. Now, what I'm curious about here is, if I now load in Q, is this level, which is actually, what do I want to do? I guess I want to go level settings. Okay, so this is r.pli. It is a vector level, but the name of it is IR, I think. It's hard to see, but I changed this to mouth. I think that I already know the answer, but I'm just curious if I go back over to Q, is that changed here? And it is not. Okay, I didn't think it would be. So that's another thing that's probably not the worst thing in the world to, okay, hold everything. File, open recent, thank you. I'm trying to find my menu. Okay, so the labeling of a level in Tahoma and the name of the level are not the same thing. Although it probably is the case that if I created the level and immediately named it, immediately labeled it, and then saved my Tahoma file, probably this would be saved as mouth.pli. One of the basically the danger that goes with referencing everything on hard drives as opposed to loading them, into a file format where they're baked in like it is in Krita. The basic risk is that, not risk, but one of the challenges that the software has to deal with continually is that if you're taking all of your PLI files, which are vector levels, which is his mouth kind of thing, if you're saving them all in a single location, which you are with Tahoma, then what about collisions? And you see it all the time with the plastic tool where Tahoma will give you the opportunity to give a mesh that you're using with the plastic tool a new name. And the names are basically randomly generated for you. If you're never looking at the file system on the hard drive, it kind of doesn't matter. You can just basically have the attitude of, just let it manage it in the background. And you can get away with that on probably a lot on smaller projects. But what I'm thinking right now is if I do anything at all to change this dialogue, like move the frames around, which I will definitely have to on this shot, is that going to break the other shot? I think it is. Tom, do you know? I mean, I could check it and find out here real quick, but do you happen to know if I move, like right now, this sequence ends at frame 6. I guess I'll just test it. So I can always move it back. So I'm going to move this down to frame 18, right? So I just lengthened it 2 segments. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to save all. Because remember, the PLI file keeps track of all the images. I don't know that the PLI file keeps track, I'm pretty sure it doesn't actually, keep track of where in your X sheet those images are exposed. So my suspicion is when I load up Q, it's still going to be ending here at 6. Let's find out. And again, we'll save all just to keep it fair. Wait for it to save it. Darren always gives the advice, create a new project per shot. If you reorder, it will break the other scene. You say, okay. That surprises me because and the reason it surprises me is because I know that I've saved TLV files, smart raster levels. And if I drag the TLV file into another scene, there is no timing information that's preserved. It'll just have the list of images, unless I'm remembering wrong. But let's find out. So now let's go back to Q. And it's not broken. See, that's what I thought. So Tom, I got you on that one. I think the PLI and the TLV files do not keep track of what Tahoma calls exposing the images. Okay, so that's good. That means that I can reuse this dialogue to my heart's content if all I'm doing is reordering. If I start changing these images, that would change the other file. If I add images to it, like 10 other ones, That would not hurt anything because the other scene would still only be referencing the first 5. I have run into situations in the past that are a little obscure that involve reordering images or something like that, and it is actually pretty possible to break things without meaning to. Just saying. So, anywho, okay, some people reorder the drawing numbers to match X-sheet cell numbers. Oh, you're talking about drawing order in the level strip. Right, the level strip. This is what effectively best reflects what's going to be saved on the hard drive with either a TLV file or a smart TLV or PLI. In other words, vector or smart raster. So, anywho, interesting stuff. But what we're going to do is we're going to give his eyes their own layer, and probably it actually wouldn't be the worst thing to just make this a little bit transparent so that I can duplicate this, you know, quickly duplicate the first drawing. B key, and then I'll just animate from there. Okay, what just happened? That was weird. Why? Wait a minute. Okay. All right, friends, we just bumped into something else that I probably should have remembered and didn't. The other day we were talking about if there's let me take a break here and look at the comments. Shared assets, then you have to watch out for. Yeah, that's a very pleasant way of putting it. Some people reorder the. Okay, so image sequence for ping format. Yeah, way back when I was doing the Akari animation, I remember I ran into that because I was referencing a storyboard, and I basically found out the hard way all the things that can go wrong in OpenToonz. Back then, I think I was using OpenToonz, not Tahoma. Anyway. What was I just about to mention? Well, you notice when I created this level, the first thing I did was just take the Smart Raster paintbrush and color this skin tone so that I covered up his eyes, right? Well, guess what? Now, presumably, because something about the presence, like, see, if I press really hard and then keep going back and forth, then it finally, like right now, it's not doing anything. It won't paint over it. So we talked about this a little bit the other day. What you're seeing here is probably among. Well, first, Tom, is there anything that you're seeing here that looks unusual, or is there anything obvious that I'm missing? If there is, just say so. But because what I'm about to say doesn't really favor Tahoma. If I was going to identify one single thing that's the biggest like deal breaker, or like I find really kind of annoying, this would be it. Is that once there's color in a zone, as opposed to like here, I'm just drawing new outlines over the, you know, transparent alpha, right? But once there's color there, Tahoma has never. In OpenToonz, you see, we're going back 5, 6, 7 years. Never in any iteration of OpenToonz or Tahoma has this problem ever been solved. Like, the software doesn't know it's supposed to be drawing a line right now, and it's drawing it underneath, except it isn't. Sometimes it's underneath, and sometimes it's above. It's like, now it's above. Here it won't work. Yeah, I mean, there's just something about the way Tahoma manages alpha channels or something that it just doesn't know what to do. It would be really nice if that were addressed. That's probably the single biggest flaw, I would say, in Tahoma2D. The biggest, by far. Especially because it's like, you got to realize, for cartoonist, like there's a zone you want to get in. It's important to understand this. Once you start drawing, like I pull up my pencil and I'm sketching and I'm kind of playing it loose and sort of finding the drawing. The thing is that there is a mental state you get in when you're doing this, and it's fun. It's like, this is really just fluid and loose and cool and fun. And then when I'm ready to, I can kind of tighten it up and maybe go put in the ink, blah, 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 blah. So anything about the tool that radically breaks that alpha state, where all of a sudden, like I'm just stopped in my tracks. All I'm trying to do is draw a line. And it's like, no, you can't. There's some weird little exception like about the software that means that the intuitive thing you just want to do that's going to take 2 seconds all of a sudden becomes a big problem you have to solve. That is probably the most important thing that you want to avoid. Now, I have a different brush here. And when I designed this brush, it's a My Paint brush, as is this one actually. I did some of the settings differently, and this one doesn't seem to have the problem as much, but it does still have it. Now, what's probably the case, I'm just taking a stab here, but it's probably the case that if I use a standard Tahoma brush, not a My Paint brush, that the problem will be either lessened or it'll be maybe even eliminated. Let's find out. This says underall, so just to be fair and clear, I'm going to say let's do overall, because you would think that means if there's anything in the level already, the new lines need to be over them. I think that's what it is. Okay, so there you go. And if I hit the F key, it does show as being fillable. So anyway, so all of this little diatribe is mainly for newbies who are going to bump into things and not understand what's going on. If you don't want to deal with let me think about how to explain this. Okay. If you don't ever want to deal with the problem of does the software know that what I'm drawing right now is supposed to be over this, the reason it's a question is because internally the software has to maintain the final set of pixels that represents this drawing, but it also has to maintain everything that's happening over top of it and then make some decisions about how things are ordered. So effectively every layer has a stack of sort of hidden layers inside of it. That's not exactly what's going on, but it's pretty much what's going on, right? And for whatever reason, I suppose what should be happening here is when I use, doesn't matter what, it shouldn't matter for me as the user what kind of brush I use. If the brushes are available, now you could say, well, no, with this particular software tool, there's a rule. And you need to know the rule. I get that. That's true. But what seems like it probably should happen is that if I'm in this level, when I draw, it's simply being actually drawn onto an invisible buffer that's part of this level. And when I'm done drawing, that invisible buffer that I just drew into is then composited to the actual underlying pixel grid, if you will. That's really how it should work. Why it doesn't work that way is a bit of a mystery, and I'm not sure what the reason is. By the way, I'm going to hit the R key here, and oh, that's not cool. That's not cool, friends. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to make it a little lighter. Close enough for rock and roll. So anyway, the simple solution is just if you're going to be mixing, when you're working in a smart raster level, generally you're going to have less problems if you don't use My Paint brushes. That is a fact. So But why we as the users like have that problem, 6-7 years later, I'm not really sure. There's something going on with the way it manages those sort of hidden layers that ain't quite optimal. But the world keeps on turning. So I'm going to take this. Hello. I guess I'm in. Am I in normal mode? Areas. What's going on here? Fill tool. Huh. Turning into one of those days. Okay, rectangular. Seriously, friend. Alright, I'm going to turn this off. Huh. Krita doesn't do indexed color like the Smart Raster does. No, I mean you can actually. Let me go back here. Are you using level transparency? You asked at 218. Level transparency meaning this? This does have a little bit of level transparency if you mean the opacity. Is that what you're referring to? I had it slightly transparent so that I could see the underlying drawing that I was making a copy of his eyes. But, okay. So, what do we have here? We've got the ink. I mean, this is, we're getting into crazy zone here. Maybe everything worked, kind of, sort of. Oh, I see what I did. Okay. Right. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying let's lasso this, and now I'm asking why doesn't it fill? Now I've been finding 5 to 10 on my fill depth. Seems to be nice. Selective is not turned on. I absolutely have no idea why this is not filling. I have no idea. So if you got a clue on that one, Tom, have at it. I am a little baffled here. So I'm going to turn off selective here and just redo this. This kind of sucks a bit. Very, very, very strange. Well, and this is basically what I was trying to explain, hey newbies, be aware this can happen. It's exactly what I was talking about that I demonstrated over here in Krita, where I just want to draw the guy's eyebrow. That's it. Nothing particularly ridiculous, that I'm trying to do here, but now I just ran into some kind of little tricky thing that you don't get to draw eyebrows today, pal. Get over it. Very weird. I don't get that. Okay, so freehand. Now it works. So as far as I can tell, what's the variable then? What is it that changed? What changed was actually just having the flesh tone underneath it. Unfortunately, in this case, it's kind of critical that it be opaque underneath it. Otherwise, I can't cover up the stuff I want to cover up. Not to be too negative here, but those kinds of things drive me bonkers. All right, so this actually is supposed to be that color, just for the record. This really should be probably more like that color. And so now the solution would be to take the B key, and here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to basically draw in a lasso you cannot see around here, and of course, because this isn't partially transparent, I can't even tell if I'm closing the shape. It looks like I did. So now, doing things in the right order, apparently. Let's now do a normal fill, and we should be okay now. Very strange behavior. B key, but is what it is, and I'm the one who's choosing to use Tahoma for this, so let's keep rocking. Okay, so so let me just look here. Okay, to answer what Tom said at 222, Krita does not do index color like the Smart Raster does. As a matter of default, and I'm saying this for completeness, that's not completely true. But Krita has fairly advanced tools, but you have to invoke them as you need them, that will take this, for example, and literally come up with a complete index color scenario that it will put in the layers, putting every individual color at whatever resolution you want. In other words, you could pixelate this, or posterize it is the proper term. You could posterize this to maybe 6 values or 25. You know, you can kind of take your pick. But Krita does give you the ability to posterize an image, turn it into what's effectively index color, so that you can then apply color correction as desired to each of the layers that, you know, are generated. So in that sense, you can actually have all the benefits of index color in Krita. In my case, it's like I don't know that I've ever used it or needed to. So just saying. Okay, so continuing to go. Choose close gaps, maybe. Maybe. I don't know why that would make a difference, but maybe. Instead of ignore gaps. Yeah, who knows? I mean, I've fixed it now, so I'm not going to reproduce. I'm not going to go back and reproduce the problem now, but that last version had single pixel lines at the top, and it sees the diagonal between the pixels as open. Let me think about what you just said there. That last version had single pixel lines at top. What do you mean by at top? And it sees the diagonal between pixels as open. The most recent version, you had a minimum of 2 pixels and not those last 2 comments, I'm sure they're important, and I would love to understand them. I don't know what you mean by the diagonal opens. Top line of the eyebrow outline. Okay. So that would be this. The most recent version, you had a minimum of 2 pixels and not diagonal opens. Okay, so you're saying, oh, I know what he's talking about. Okay, guys, let me explain it this way. This deserves a moment of explanation. God, probably the best way to explain it would be, unfortunately, to jump back over to Krita, because I can pull up a brush that clarifies what Tom's talking about. So anyone else that watches this, let's grab the pixel brush. Probably this one would be okay. Okay. So I need a new layer. Okay. So if we zoom in really close, this is a Tom's kind of bringing up an interesting problem that anybody that's in software development with graphics is going to maybe bump into sometime. Here's the question. Is this a closed line or not? That's the question. Some software sees that right there as being open. In other words, the only way this is considered closed is if it's actually a minimum at all points of 2 pixels wide. I happen to agree, and I think Tom would agree, that philosophically, let's say, this is the correct answer. This should be considered closed. This could be considered open, and you really shouldn't bitch about it, because there's not too many situations where you really want to have a 1 pixel diagonal outline anyway. It's kind of bad practice. You can mitigate it this way. What you could do, again, it requires a bunch of hassle to do it, but the way you would solve it is you would add like a, let's just keep it fair here. In fact, let me cancel that. Let me check something real quick. Bear with me. Okay. Cancel. I'm going to use the Gaussian blur because I normally keep my standard blur to always 5 pixels. So what I want to do here is just take this and I want to make it 1. A 1 pixel blur. Okay. So you're taking the diagonal line, adding a 1 pixel blur, and then basically what you do is in the alpha channel you then pump up the contrast. And depending on how your settings are, you're going to strengthen that line, and effectively, if you want it to actually definitely be a closed shape, you would want to have something like this. Well, actually, like that. Yeah, that's pretty much what you're trying to do. So the question is a diagonal line, if you guys made that change in Tahoma, so that basically Tahoma says, you know what, this line, no matter what, is going to be a minimum of 2 pixels thick everywhere. Is that what you're saying has been done? I would agree with that choice. I think that's the right choice. I don't think it should be possible to have a diagonal line that doesn't fill. To me, that's kind of stupid, only because it's non-intuitive. Like, the average newbie would come to the software and freaking expect that if I have a closed shape, even though some of it's diagonal, it should fill. Right? That would be just what a normal person would expect. So therefore, whatever the software has to do to accommodate that behind the scenes is probably a good thing. So that's my opinion. Not like my opinion carries the day, but there it is. So I think what I'm explaining is kind of along the lines of what Tom's talking about. You're not making a truth claim. You're only saying that it may be. It was the difference between the two lines tried filling. Right. Right. Okay, so what Tom is saying, okay, guys, I'm going to just explain this even a step further. Here's what Tom's actually saying. He's saying when this eyebrow didn't fill, the reason it didn't fill is because I might have had a line here that was only 1 pixel wide, basically. And so the reason it wasn't filling had nothing to do with the flesh tone behind it, but was actually because Tahoma was not seeing this as a closed shape. I could have solved the problem by simply hitting the Control-Shift-F and looking at it with the fill check tool to see if it's actually even fillable. Probably would have been a good idea. But dude, I'm just not that smart on Mondays, apparently. Okay, so what happens in this scene? I'm going to give this 1 second, and then I'm going to hit the D key here and draw kind of the tops of Mel's eyes. I'm doing it this way. Actually, let me back up again just a little bit here. I'm giving myself way more grief than I need because of working around Tahoma's way of doing things. Okay, what do I mean by that? To be perfectly safe here, what would actually make way more sense for me would probably be to create like a vector layer here, vector level, with auto close and auto fill, and put the color blotch that's supposed to be covering up the eyes from this layer. What I'm covering this up with should really be on its own layer. And the reason is, hang on, let me get this to be the right color. So I'm going to go R key, hello? I guess I need to turn this on. R key, there. By putting it on another layer, because the problem is, if I go into this layer and erase anything, I'm erasing the flesh tone that was behind it, and I potentially have the same problem we were looking at earlier, which is kind of dumb. Let's not have that problem. Wouldn't that be good? So now by just putting the blotch that covers it on a different layer, now all of a sudden the whole problem's eliminated. Sometimes I'm just not smart enough. And speaking of not being smart enough, I just proved it because I deleted these eyes that I'm changing on the wrong frame. I meant to do it here. Oh, what a silly boy. Okay. Now, in this case, I am going to add, let's actually use the Smart Raster Paint tool and see if we can get away with it. I'm going to go like this. So I think from an educational standpoint, this is all really pretty useful. And the reason it's useful is you see that there are multiple ways to solve a problem. And when in doubt, the simplest way, even though it's it seems ungainly to have an extra layer just for that. Yet, in fact, it probably is the best policy. When in doubt, just give yourself as many layers as you need to sort of do the thing you're trying to do. That's all opinion at the end of the day, but there you go. Okay, so let's look at what's going on. Let me look at this. Well, not F12, you silly goose. Let's just go into this mode. Okay. Just so you guys know, notably, on this scene when I set this all up, normally I've used the transparency in the level to make the shadows transparent. In this case, I didn't, just so you know. When I use the multiply INO plugin or filter effect, whatever you want to say, I believe I set the opacity there. That's kind of bad policy. This probably should be 1. Just so that I can change it here instead. Why is that useful? So that they're transparent even when I'm not rendering. Like, so they're transparent all the time. They're just not getting in the way as much. So, just saying, if you're going to do that, though, this is important. Go into your file, your scene settings, and make sure this is turned on. Otherwise, enable column color filter and transparency for rendering. Otherwise, your semi-transparent levels will not render semi-transparent unless you do it the hard way, which is through the schematic, or the node-based compositor, which is what it actually is. Okay, so now what we do know with Melchizedek on this shot is he's got a long bit of dialogue. I don't blame you, Tayanara. It's hard to imagine your family being worse than being stuck in the wilderness with us. Okay, so that's a lot of emoting. Let's see what we have so far. Okay, I don't want that to be in render mode because I want to play back quickly. I don't blame you, TNR. Okay, let's go with that so far. I like what I see. Let's get the timing on this. I don't blame you, TNR. So this, I need the closed mouth shape, which I suppose would be 1. So I guess we'll change this to 1 and then extend this down. And then these, for now, I'm just going to take them out. I don't need them in there. I know I'm going to be replacing them, but okay, so now, again, just for completeness, I want to look again at the prior scene. I'm pretty sure nothing's been changed because this is intact. The mouth shapes, the collection of mouth shapes, if you will. But I just want to make sure because I've been bitten in the hiney before because of, let us say, uncertainty in terms of how Tahoma chooses to deal with, these frames, these levels, these assets that are actually stored on the hard drive and shared between scenes. Okay, so just going to go back and check Q. Go back and check Q. And it looks like nothing has changed, which is what I expected. So that's good. We're in good shape, friends. Okay, so this is turned off. I believe I already changed this. I did. Okay. So what I changed here was I took the ending point from this shot in terms of where the river is in the background, and I took the end of it and I put it at the beginning of this shot. honestly, he probably should be a little further downstream. And something like that, I think. And then I just was kind of guessing on how long this shot was going to be. Let me run the dialogue and see. I don't blame you. I'm sorry. Trying to do too many things at once. Here we go. Okay, he says, I don't blame you, Tina. It's hard to imagine your family being worse than being stuck in the wilderness with us. It looks like 96 is probably about right. Okay, so if 96 is about right, I've done enough of these shots now that probably I can ballpark it and be pretty good. But basically, here's what needs to happen. He just needs to be... That's probably fine. I mean, there's a case to be made for rotating the background image. Okay, so here's the background image. It's pretty big. Okay. I think I'm going to run with this. I think I am going to run with this. Okay, so positioning-wise, in terms of the pace of it, it looks okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually turn this a little bit like that. I don't know how this is going to work out, but I'm going to try it. And then I'm going to turn it like that. Now once we crop it, how's it going to work? I don't know. So you don't even notice it, actually. You do not even notice it. Oh, yes, you do. Now that's interesting. Why did that do a gradual? Oh, there's 2 keyframes in there. Hey there, dummy. Why? How did I manage to put in 2 keyframes? I guess what I did, like a fool, is on my very first keyframe, I meant to... I hate when I do this. It's like I make a mistake and then I'm just fiddling around with trying to compensate for it. It looks to me like that's not going to work. That rotation that's jarring. That is jarring. Okay, so let me just do a little undo here. Boom, 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 boom. That's probably it. Okay. Yeah, and so is that location okay? Yes. Is that location okay? Yes. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just give it a little bit of a tilt here. And that's 8 degrees roughly. And I'm going to make this maybe a degree more, but not too much. And just see if it feels okay. Okay, not really, because nope, obviously there's people out there shouting at their screens right now because they're saying, Dave, are you seriously that dumb? Why doesn't it work? It doesn't work because there's things in the background image that are level to the horizon that now aren't, which doesn't make sense. So the only way you can make what I'm trying to do actually play is to rotate Melchizedek. You have to rotate the boat. And I might do that. But it's not that pressing. As long as the background's moving, the feeling of the scene is working fine. So let's go with that. And now we can think about the dialogue. Okay, let me ask myself this question. Do we want to... Let me see. This shot of Tia, she goes like this. Kind of a... What if... Let's just go here. Yep, right there. That's the magic spot right there. Okay, so what I'm going to do, you guys, I'm always looking for opportunities to, and I know you guys aren't seeing it. All I'm doing is scanning through this shot to find if there's a spot in the shot that if it was ran in reverse, would kind of work. Now, there is a problem, and this entire sequence at the end of the show somewhat underscores the problem. And you know what the problem is? You can't run this in reverse when you've got a background that's moving. So to do what I'm talking about doing, I would have to go into the Krita file and actually repurpose this shot. But I think it's the right idea. So in other words, Mel says his first line of dialogue, "Yeah, I don't blame you, Tianara," and then she goes like this. That's it. Just that little bit right there is super cool. And it breaks up the Melchizedek shot, which is the real purpose. So you're not just like sitting here looking at this one character forever. All right. If that's the case, I'm going to end this shot at 48. Put in a cutaway shot of Tianara just because it's the darn right thing to do, and then we'll just put the continuance of Mel's dialogue on another scene, and then I think I'm probably going to wrap for this session because it's getting to be close to, well, normally around 3. I'm wrapping up for lunch and whatnot. Okay, so let's jump back over here. Grab this. Boom. Let's put in shot S. Render. Boom. Boom. 96 is not what we want. The last image is going to be 48. I want to go in and clean that up, by the way. But that's, for the moment, that's okay. We can work with it. Okay, this needs to be not resampled. Okay, so again, if we want to be anal, let's go to scene S, and it's actually my one. I love this. This image viewer app is really good. It has one small flaw, which is that you need to manually refresh the screen or switch to another folder for it to realize that there's been new folders added. So, a bit on the clunky side. But this, the last image was 48. I don't want these in here. Is it a big deal if they are in here? No, not really. But just trying to keep things organized, friends. Keep things organized. Okay. Go back over here. All right. So now T is like, And what just happened? That's fascinating. That is fascinating. Okay. Let's jump back over to Tahoma and see what's going on. What's going on is that that sucks. That's one of those things that's sufficiently sucky to border on creepy. But for those who don't know what the heck's going on, let me show you. In Tahoma, you have supreme control over the way all of your layers are layered and rendered. If you don't do anything over here, then it just renders from basically left to right. So everything at the rightmost edge of the screen is on top of everything that's to its left. The further you go east, you're adding stuff on top. Get it? Except if you do any of this where you're manipulating the ordering in some way, shape, or form, then this is overridden. And it has a weird side effect. And the weird side effect in this case is that when I rendered it, these two layers literally don't appear at all in the render. Crazy, huh? Well, probably here's the solution. Take these and put them like that. Put them to the right. Did that work? That did work. Now there's a potential issue with it. And you could address it over here. Like I keep saying, there's more than one way to do things. You could address it over here by feeding other layers, combining them and putting them through the multiply filter that's actually handling the shadows. But it looks like I solved it. So a lot of times, if you just take the stuff that's important and move it to the right hand side, that solves the ordering problem. The potential gotcha on this scene is that I've got this shape right here. Okay, that's interesting too. It's interesting because it didn't work. I've got the tilde key. I have the tilde key set to isolate a layer, and for some reason it's not working. But anyway, all I'm trying to say here in a very convoluted way is this. This patch could potentially encroach on the shadow. It looks like it didn't, and at the moment I'm not even exactly sure why it didn't, but I don't care. This is the way it was supposed to look, so I'm just going to go with it for the moment. Come back here, and now, yeah, I don't blame you, TNR. Okay, so then we want to cut back to TNR. So we need, TNR is R. Let's go to the R shot. For now, the boat, we don't need to save it because the only reason it's wanting to be saved is because all the stuff we did earlier. So here's R. And what we're going to do is we're going to reverse a few things. Okay. So why does this look so choppy, you say? Because I'm waiting for Krita's buffers. Waiting for the buffers to fill. Okay, so we got this transform mask, and what we want to do is take this keyframe, we want to remove this frame and pull. What that just did, well, what it was supposed to do, but unfortunately didn't seem to want to do reliably, is make it so that the last frame is now the first frame. That way we can go over here, hit the A key, and just make a small change. Okay. Now the caveat is that I better darn well save this immediately under a different name, otherwise it's going to botch the original shot that I'm building off of. So this is going to be 03-94-T. Put that folder there. 03-94-T. Boom. Okay. That's cool. So now we got that solved. And what we're doing is we're starting from the end. First of all, does her mouth matter in this shot? A little bit. We don't want all this stuff. So for this shot, we can get rid of all those. And I'm going to take a quick diversion back to the chat and see if there's anything going. Whoa! Yeah, you could do a zoom. Yeah, I mean, there's 800 ways to do it, and the main thing is when you're watching the show, does it feel right? That's the main thing. Basically, it feels pretty right. She's like, seems like it wants to move a little bit sideways, not just up, but again, that's stuff we can come back and tweak a bit. Yeah, that's definitely wrong. So let's go here. Bear with me, guys. I'm basically juggling multiple things here. Turn that off. Yes. Okay. So where the heck? I'm not going to move this, by the way. I'm not going to move this keyframe because the timing is about right. Pretty sure that'll get me there. Pretty sure that'll get me there. But yeah, Tom's correct. You would kind of want to zoom into the... Yeah, there we go. That's better. All right, back to Tia. Okay, so now how do we do this? Well, the thing we know for sure is that we want to reverse this action. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab all of these keyframes and I'm going to hit mirror frames. Okay? That comes with its own set of challenges, potentially. but we'll see. See what I mean? Honestly, I'm not confused at the moment. I'm just thinking. This is kind of a good example of where what am I trying to say? When you're taking frames and reversing them, what you're going to see is totally a reflection of what happened first. That new frames are changing. I don't know if that makes sense, but the bottom line is things can get out of sync if you're not careful. And in other words, pre-rendering Tianara, all of her layers, just pre-render them to a flat, and then bring that back into the shot would actually probably be the best choice in this case. So we've got this shot we did before, and watch how I'm going to do it. Okay. We know that we've got the movement here with the background is looking pretty good, so I'm going to turn the background off, and I'm going to go into render mode here. We're on shot T, so watch this. I'm going to change this to T and render it without the background. Boop, 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 boop. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to File, import the animation frames from T, all of them. Boom. Okay, so why did we do that? Just to make this easier. Now these two layers are completely unnecessary. Just get rid of them. Put Tia above the background. Let's see what this is. Oh yeah, that was my color reference. Don't need that. This is the arm sketch. Don't need that. So now shot T, all I have to do is take the entire image sequence from before and hit mirror frames so that the whole shot runs in reverse. Put that here, and then all we're looking for is the place in the shot where, right there. Okay? So I'm going to take all of this and go remove frame and pull. That ripple edits it. That's it. That's the whole shot. Let's just say 2 seconds, 16 frames. I'm just going to get rid of those. And probably I could move this up a little bit. I'm thinking just to make the background motion slightly quicker. Yep, that's okay. Okay. That's that. That's that. Now, when we loaded those images from the hard drive, they're now baked into the Krita file. So that means if I re-render, I'm going to overwrite them, but it doesn't matter because they're baked into the Krita file. And we are not going to frame 56. Let me just change that. Let's fix this right now. We're just going to frame 16. Okay, is that long enough? It is long enough because when she makes this transition, we could continue Mel's dialogue, right? And that's less lip sync we have to do on the Melchizedek shot, isn't it? Ta-da. So we're going to export this. Poof. Bring it into Vegas, and then we're basically done for this session. All right, so let's go here. Flip back over to Vegas. And we're going to import T. There it is. Render. Boom. 16 frames. Done. 8 frames per second as usual. Pop it in here. And there we go. So what do we have on this shot? Let's take a peek. So the kids are lazily floating down the river. At least Monkey found some snacks. Are you referring to the walnuts or... I admit, Dianara, it would be better if we had a way to eat them. Yeah, at least we made it out of Gripson in one piece. I don't blame you, Tianara. Okay, I need to change the... Okay, just so you know, you guys, the timing here is not amazing. Okay, this needs to be trimmed back. There's multiple places here where, from an editing standpoint, everything's too loose. It's like we're lingering on Tianara much longer than we need to. Yeah, right there in one piece, probably about there would be good. She's boom. Okay, why did we get this blanking there? There, that looks good. Okay. Okay. All right, so let me think about this. I'm thinking about ways I can cheat. If he said, I don't blame you, Tina, it's hard to imagine your family being worse. No, I don't blame you, Tina. I can't imagine your family being worse than... okay. You see what I'm doing here? Let me make sure I'm on the right screen. Okay, yeah. So what I'm saying is, he says here, poof, yeah, I don't blame you, Tianara, but wait a second. He says that, and then she kind of, there's just a cutaway shot to just keep it interesting, right? Well, wait a second. Can we save even more animation? At least we made out of grips in one piece. Something about this shot I don't like. I am going to bump this up to 10 frames a second and see if it feels better. Move that. I don't think it's going to. I don't blame you, Tianara. Okay. I'm going to switch this back. Let me just switch this back right now. Okay. There's the blink. So I guess the timing on that is alright. But if he says, yeah, I don't blame you, Tianara. Okay, stop. Let's fix that problem. Okay, so if she blows her little strawberry and he says, I don't blame you, Tianara. I'm going to change that, I think, to Tia. Yeah, I don't blame you, Tia. Oh, come on. Vegas, like, I swear to God, no matter what I do, it's just not exact enough. There's always something that's got to be fixed. Sheesh. Hello. Thank you. Okay. It's hard to imagine. Worse than... I think that's probably it for today. It's hard to imagine. Worse than... You know. Yeah, let's do this. So his dialogue ends. She has a reaction shot. This, again, technically... Technically, we have to change the background. Let me tell you. It's hard to imagine being... Okay, I know I sound like completely like a lunatic right now. It's because I'm looking at the animation and I have to look at the other screen to see the dialogue, so I can read it to see how the timing's working out. I don't blame you, TNR. It's hard to imagine family being worse than me. Okay. Okay, I'll work out the timing later. I may not do this thing where I have him speak earlier, but the overall flow of it feels pretty good. So, unfortunately, this really can't be there, at least not yet. And this is exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about. I grab this and I hit delete, and it doesn't delete because there's something selected over here. Okay. Tools, clean the media pool, and that's it. I'm done for today, or at least for this afternoon. Is this got disabling resampled? Or you hear what I just said? Has this got disabled resampled? Or disabling resampled? And what I meant to say was, does this have resampling disabled? Okay. Anyway, that's it, guys. This has been a pretty productive session. Knocked out another 12 seconds, so that's progress. Where are we at? 21:40. Ah, man, we're approaching the 22-minute point. It's crazy. Okay, anything going on over here? Nothing going on in the chat. So, all right, guys, it's been an hour and a half. I'm ready to wrap. Yep, bye for now. And as you guys know, there will be more later. Poof.